Hi, everyone. Sorry, just a very quick one. The reason we got Phil in today is because obviously Sitecore are long-standing Microsoft partners, and Azure is something that we get asked about quite a lot. We probably get about 2 inquiries a week at the moment from customers about it. So we invited Phil along just to sort of talk about the Azure offering and the benefits in terms of scale, cost, flexibility, and so on. Just to let you know that Sitecore does work with Azure. We have licenses that work for it. There's no extra cost from your side. You already have a Sitecore license. But Phil's going to talk you through the benefits of it. And if you've got any questions, then feel free to grab me or him or one of the other guys from Sitecore a bit later on. So I'll hand over to Phil.
Okay, am I on? Yes, thank you. Good. So I'm Philip Bull. I'm one of the worldwide team in Microsoft who work on business development for the Azure public cloud platform, principally with our partner community. And Sitecore are our ISV Partner of the Year last year worldwide in Microsoft. So a very significant partnership has been developing over the last few years, and particularly based on public cloud. Can I just ask how many of you are in organizations that are using public cloud in some way today? Okay. Anyone's touched Azure directly so far? You have. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not really going to talk about Sitecore much. I've only got one slide on the Sitecore deployment, and there are plenty of people who can do this in much more detail than me. So I'm just going to focus a little bit on what Microsoft Azure consists of. I'm going to give you all a flavor of the scale of this operation and why it's here to stay, and the enterprise class quality, really, of the Azure platform. I'm going to talk a little bit about the other ways that Microsoft Azure can be used by your organizations alongside what you might do with a Sitecore deployment, because there's a lot of business benefit in terms of lowering costs, flexibility, and speed to market that you should be able to see across all of your IT infrastructure and start to do that immediately once you start engaging with Azure. So I'll spend more of my time on that piece. The other element I'm going to discuss really is we've got quite good co-partnering arrangements going on with significant organizations coming from digital marketing kind of space, already working with me in the Azure platform deployment area with skill set, nth level skills to do anything in the public cloud, but they're also really significant Sitecore partners that understand the software and the environment, so they can help also work with you to implement solutions. Okay? On that note, actually, is the agenda. Okay, so a little summary. 10 minutes on Azure, one slide on Sitecore Azure Edition, and I'll talk about some significant other use cases maybe you could think about in your organizations where Azure would be a significant benefit to you, and a little bit on the co-partners. Okay. So what is Azure? I mean, just quickly, Microsoft Azure is effectively a stack of data centers which we offer public cloud services from. They're the same data centers that run things like Microsoft Office 365 and other services, like any of you using a Windows device who enjoy receiving that Windows update on a periodic basis and watching that, all those billions of updates come out of the same data center. So very large scale distributed operation for services before we even started building Azure some 5 years ago or so. But really, Microsoft Stack exists. You've heard about Dynamics a little bit, but the Microsoft Stack exists, in your data centers, in customer data centers around the world, and it's fully integratable up to the Azure cloud platform. Right? There's very little distinction between any of the software capabilities, so we can build a full hybrid environment between the two. So when there's a situation where your data needs to stay on-premise, maybe for threat level reasons, geographic reasons, whatever, you can still integrate with levels of, for example, Sitecore in Azure, the data in Azure through a hybrid mechanism. You end up signing one Azure contract, right? One throat to choke, that's me, across the whole environment, fully supported in hybrid. We're very open and flexible. So I personally am a 20-year Linux guy who joined Microsoft 4 years ago purposely to get involved in public cloud because of the scale. And we've seen a number of hell freezes over moments in the last few years, right? So you can go up to Windows Azure, public interface, go up to the website, and you can purchase Oracle licenses, for example, within virtual machines and deploy them straight in the public cloud. And a lot of people in Microsoft didn't think that was ever going to happen. We've got SAP on Azure now, right? We have a whole stack of Linux distributions you can just purchase and run. So it's not all about Windows only, it's not all about Microsoft environments only, and we're just trying to capture that platform play. And we have a really huge team just working on the whole security, audit standards, etc. around the data center. Probably many of you who dipped your toe into public cloud or are thinking more about it would have a lot of questions about, you know, are you restricted? Is it going to cause you problems to be using public cloud around data? And I've now got a significant amount of experience of taking very large-scale corporates on visits to our data centers and discussing the comparisons with their own data centers back home. And I'm quite prepared to compete on how good we are on security and the various audit standards. If you go to the Microsoft Azure website, so microsoftazure.com/Trust Center. Trust Center is where you find out everything you need to know about what we do in security and audit standards. Right. So just the global presence. There are approximately 2 million servers in the Windows Azure platform available across the world now. It's doubling approximately every 6 months. So it's a massive Microsoft investment, and you can almost think of it as infinitely scalable. So huge presence across the US. In fact, there's now 6 major data center locations in the US, 2 key data centers in Europe, in Dublin and in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Strangely labeled Northern Europe for Dublin and Western Europe for Amsterdam, but that's some of my American colleagues who decided on a geographical naming convention. And then we're building out, we've had Asian data centers, we built out in Brazil earlier this year, we're building out in Australia to launch very soon now, and a massive build out is going on for Microsoft in China at the moment. And it's hard to think about a Chinese public cloud outside of China, right? So you tend to want the data to stay inside China. You need a big infrastructure. And we're the only major cloud provider who are building out on that scale in China right now. So I'm just going to give an illustration really of the kind of services overall now. It's the last really generic slide on this that we deliver. So think of Azure as being a set of infrastructure services at the lowest possible layer, a set of data services that sit on top of that, and then application services above that. And I think some of those application services, again, are very usable in the world of digital strategy and digital marketing. So things like the ability to write simple push notifications out to mobile devices and build websites on mobile devices for anyone's device, right? So yes, Windows, but also iOS, Android devices. The ability to do quite in-depth analytics and mesh that with analytics that you may be doing through Sitecore or indeed through a Dynamics environment to look at the business intelligence around your customer base. And then things like just integrating with other parts of the Microsoft stack, particularly like Office 365. So it's very common now that almost every Office 365 deployment, actually the directory services which decide whether you're eligible to use those services are deployed, Active Directory is deployed in Azure these days, because it allows us to do geographic failover for directory services and scale the operation in a much cheaper way than doing it on your on-premise data center. Okay. So in the data services space, we obviously have our relational technologies, really SQL, but we also have something we call blob storage, which is effectively a flat file, large-scale storage, and this would be one of the areas that Sitecore will be using in the non-relational space, for example, to do very large-scale storage environment. This stuff is incredibly cheap, right? This is the cheapest storage. When we buy a server, when we own 2 million of them, we go to Dell or HP and buy a server, we're probably getting the cheapest price in the world for the servers, but it's also true of the storage environments, and we like to pass that on. So this morning, we just reduced the price of the whole Windows Azure platform by 27%. It's a war, right? It's a war with public cloud providers to see who's got the most cash in the bank that can hold on to this kind of investment. So it's a good time to be looking at investing into this area. Down at the bottom end of the stack here are the number of things I think you could find very useful. So first of all, the virtual machine environment. And this is full standard, integrates with our virtual machine environment you would see in Hyper-V, and we can do conversions from VMware that make it the case that we're fully integrated in hybrid fashion up to the cloud as well. We can deliver virtual private network services between your data center and the Azure public cloud. So you can effectively bring all your IPs, your protocols to the cloud rather than having to rebuild all that and change that. It's just a natural expansion. And more recently, we've been investing and working with some of our more telco partner types around something called ExpressRoute, which is much more high performance direct connection, so you're not going across public internet for more secure and high performance services up to public cloud. We have something called the Content Delivery Network down at the bottom right, the CDN. So I talked about the major data centers around the world, but we also have all these peripheral data centers. So if we want to go looking at the same kind of performance, maybe in a country that doesn't have the Azure service very locally today, in a major data center versus one that does. So same performance in London as I might see today, for example, in Tokyo before we build the data center. There'll be a content delivery node somewhere that will allow us to build repeaters and extra performance via caching to make sure it's the same user experience for the application around the world. So come and have a chat with me if you want to talk any more detail about some of these services. But this platform changes every week, right? It's quite difficult as a technology guy working in Microsoft to keep up with all the things that we're announcing, but MicrosoftAzure.com is the place to go and see all the latest announcements. Okay. So, Sitecore Azure Edition. This is pulled from the Sitecore website, right? I don't really know that much about this, right? So I'm working with the business development guys in Sitecore in the UK through our co-partners to mutual benefit right now and trying to do the right things for you guys in terms of performance and support. But the reality is, you have the ability with the Sitecore Azure Edition of keeping what you need on-premise, doing the integration work because you want fast to deploy, scalable websites that cost a lot less money to run, and possibly the ability to flick a switch and geographically distribute. If you do something in the UK and you're suddenly going into another geography and you want to take your solution there, you flick a switch, it just goes to a different Azure server somewhere in the world, and you can start offering that service immediately. I mean, one of the customers I've got that's not really in your space, but if you think about financial services and the whole area of risk management, we've got customers in the UK that use 10,000 compute instances to do 5-hour numeric algorithm runs, right, to make risk management decisions for their clients. And we've got customers like that are in the UK. They had 20 servers in the back office originally. They did everything there, and it used to take 5 weeks to do the run. Now they're using 10,000 instances in Azure. They flick a switch. Half of their business is actually US-based, New York merchant banking-based customers now, just because they were deployed in Azure, and they can launch that immediately. No infrastructure to build out, nothing to own and manage, because we do that on their behalf. Okay? So just think about the Azure Edition for Sitecore. Really, the real benefit overall, I think, over an on-premise version might be the speed of delivery you'll achieve for your solutions, the kind of reliability. Every time you deploy an instance in Azure, we double it up, right? So there's 3 instances sat out there. So if we lose an instance, we lose a disk drive, lose a piece of hardware, we've always got that local backup copy. Then there are more extreme ways to do high availability, which cost more money because you're adding in servers which sit in the next container, next geography, multi-site geo failover, etc. We can do anything you need to enhance that reliability. You're not going to be able to read this slide. I was hoping these are going to be distributed. I'm happy for this set to go out from the Sitecore website. This would just be something to refer to later, I think. Look at the different use cases your organization could be thinking about using Microsoft Azure for. So it's talking about customer pain points here in different areas. So what we've been seeing over the last year, particularly, if you go down here, infrastructure scaling out onto Azure. So for the first time in the last year, we've been experiencing customers who've got multiple large data centers saying, instead of looking piecemeal all my applications and how many I can use in public cloud, how many I can't, let's build a project plan, let's spend a year phasing that across. People have been coming to us and our partners are making a decision which says, I've got 20 data centers, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $500,000, let's shut one down. You've got 12 months to make it work in Azure. If you make it work, I'll do another 5 next year and another 5. If you fail, I'll just go and host it somewhere else, maybe another public cloud, or pull it back on premise. So for the first time in the last 12 months, we've really seen significant investments, tens of thousands of servers being deployed in Azure for anything that an organization might be doing, and only data restrictions will stop them along the way. We have an integration between SharePoint and Sitecore, for example. SharePoint's a big application play for us on the Azure platform, again for scalability and speed of delivery. I've mentioned that certain ERP systems like SAP are now available on Azure and fully supported by SAP, which is even more interesting. Identity management, I mentioned earlier. I guess the other area I was just going to mention was really in the big data analysis piece here. So we have specific Hadoop MapReduce technology in that service layer that can be purchased off the shelf within Azure. We have a number of partners that actually engage with Sitecore as well, who also have that skill set to do real depth big data analysis. Another thing we've been seeing in the industry is large retail online organizations, again, wanting to geographically launch their websites, their solutions in another geography quickly. So they want to do two things. They're not just doing single image displays of their products for people to look at and buy. They're doing video of the products. So they say, I'm being very careful not to mention the product so you can't guess who it is. But the customers are doing that kind of thing. And when you do video, you need to use something like a media services distribution stack. It's 100-fold in terms of the storage. You don't want to be paying local server costs to be able to do that. And then Hadoop, HD Insight, MapReduce technology allows people to do real big data analysis before they even launch, right? So when they launch in another geography, they're capturing every click through and analyzing what's going on with that data. So we've got plenty of people doing that now. Anyway, it's something to look through later maybe. So 4 areas I would suggest your organizations could use Microsoft Azure Public Cloud for alongside what you might do with Sitecore Azure Edition. Just think of the storage piece at the moment that, I'll just build up the slide because I'm using a corporate slide deck that builds up and I prefer not to. Right. So most organizations, this slide is saying, is the storage capacity is going up whoop, like that in an exponential way. However, most of the stuff you need to touch, the local working set data, the local read and write data you want to touch is actually very small at the bottom that needs to be kept on local storage for performance reasons. But there's a huge amount of non-volatile, read-only, keeping for compliance reasons, might never touch it again. Why not just host it in the cloud at the lowest storage rates you could possibly get? And there are various studies, Forrester and others, which talk about SAN on-premise being 4 times the price of that cloud storage solution. That's not just our cloud, that's aggregating across all cloud offerings. It's an area to look at. And Microsoft ourselves, we've been investing in appliance technologies, a thing called Store Simple. You can drop into your environment and it will help you automate this burst of that kind of read-only data at tier 2 storage layer out to the cloud to save money. That's a really big area to look at. This is a year old, this slide, talking about 10 trillion storage objects in Azure. I'm sure it's significantly bigger than that now. Something else has been taking place since we introduced our infrastructure services. For those cloud jockeys in the audience who really know about platform as a service, infrastructure service, all the architectural stuff I'm not going through here, Microsoft introduced our infrastructure services about 14 months ago. So one of the reasons historically there were deployments out there on Amazon wouldn't have been on Azure is we didn't offer that raw infrastructure piece through virtual machines, but we have done for 14 months, and our market share is zooming versus Amazon and all the others since. But one of the things we're trying to do is obviously keep the technology up to date. When you buy a server in the public cloud, or you rent a server in the public cloud, is it the same server as the other guy's server, right? How many gigahertz in the server? Okay? So we're trying to keep that really up to date and perform. And there have been various studies, for example, around storage performance, so accessing that storage, and then how fast that refreshes, how fast it can fail over, that kind of thing. Nasuni are an independent organization doing that kind of study where we tend to come out on top. And in fact, everything they did was based around serving Linux applications in the public cloud. So it was kind of a surprise, and this was done 9 months ago or so. So we'd only been offering that for about 3 months. So I was quite pleased that we got good results there. Another area to look at maybe across the board, I see it a lot in the SharePoint environment, but I'm sure it must happen in your test environment around Sitecore and other applications areas, that again, why provision local hardware, right, and software and support services just to do development test workload? Place it in the cloud, do your dev test there, so you stand it up when you need it, pay for what you use, take it away again, stop paying for that infrastructure when you don't need the dev test environment. This is a big proposition that a lot of very big organizations are taking advantage of public cloud for these days. This slide's horribly builder. I'll need to get it to stop at some stage. Two more, I think. That'll do. So I've mentioned things like Office 365 being serviced through a cloud-based Active Directory service to accredit the various users. But think about also, the number of devices that are out there, whichever manufacturer that your employees use, and also, any consumer products. We're working very hard on large-scale Internet of Things projects. I was discussing earlier how we're working with customers where you're going to start to see coffee machines that will recognize your face very soon. They're out there being deployed. I'm not sure what the advantages of this is going to make offers as you walk up to the machine, supply you with different smells. It's already happening in a mall in Dubai at the moment. But the key thing is about Azure is it's just there waiting to receive that data, support it and serve it back, and allow you to do the business intelligence or run an asset management solution or a CMS solution on top of that for your marketing. It's just there. And that kind of organization, we spec'd out how much Azure do you need to buy on an annual basis to support that kind of deployment. And it's about $20,000 a year worldwide for all the coffee machines they're thinking of putting out there. It's tiny amounts for every single one of those potential interactions up through here. So well worth thinking about for very large scale Internet of Things projects. I've already talked a little bit about extending the infrastructure, but also if you work in an organization that has very significant burst mode applications. So for example, the UK clearing system for universities, UCAS, runs on Azure now. Every June, so all students are changing institution. There's a massive recycling. They need something like 10x, 20x the performance in a data center that they actually physically own. It's pointless. So they both pay for a burst for what they need in Azure and then stop paying for the rest of the year and go back to their low-level use of Azure and their own infrastructure. So that kind of extension is great. If you're in an environment that also uses Microsoft management products like System Center, it's absolutely perfect. There's a wonderful demo System Center guys do in Microsoft where they're playing away managing virtual machines within the on-premise data center, and then they make the screen go black and then just carry on. It looks like they're doing the same thing. What they've done is press the button to send the VMs up to Microsoft Azure, and then they're managing from the same pane of glass exactly the same infrastructure from that point. So it looks exactly the same whether you're in the cloud or on-premise, which is great to reduce management costs and be more flexible in the way you do that. Okay. I'm coming to the end here. You're going to see a lot of developments on desktop management as well coming soon. So through various third parties, we can allow effectively your desktop environment to be serviced out of Microsoft Azure. At the moment, in the Microsoft environment, so things like Office 365, it's not physically in Azure yet, but that integration's coming because Azure is the glue in everything that Microsoft is doing now. It's going to attach. So watch out for that soon. I'm going to finish around here. So just want to mention, I don't know if any of you are familiar with some of these co-partners of Sitecore and Microsoft in the UK, but I work regularly with around 65 systems integration partners around Microsoft Azure's platform. So some of them will know the platform in breadth, everything I've shown on those slides. They'll have deep skills. They're not always the largest global SI organizations in the world. Sometimes they're just significant national level guys with a skill set. Sometimes they'll focus right down on individual solutions. I've got partners who do big data, etc. We have a group of partners, this is not all of them, who focus very much in the arena of digital strategy, digital marketing, particularly with Sitecore, but also occasionally with other digital asset management solutions, or those DAM solutions as was described earlier. And we also have the capability to integrate fully, as been heard, with Dynamics and increasingly with SharePoint. So these are the kind of specialist organizations that both Sitecore and Microsoft are working with that can fulfill your needs in the UK. We're in the process of looking at, we're going to, probably within the next 4 weeks, be dropping in a major demonstration environment into the Microsoft Technology Centres, particularly in Reading, maybe in London as well, that's already going into our US technology centres and our Australian ones at this point, which is a fully integrated Sitecore, Dynamics and SharePoint environment, so you can come and take a look at that. And the kind of people who will run those demos and host them will be some of these partners that we have jointly down below. So, anyone used any of these partners? Anyone touched anyone? Okay. Go look some of them up. There's some quite sexy references for stuff. So, I mean, it's all about user interface and making people's business very attractive, right? Even prior to the Sitecore engagement, I think if you go look at websites like Storm Models Agency, there was a big port onto Microsoft Azure some 18 months or so ago as a public reference. Speed up the application by 2,000% for the model bookers. It allows catwalk environments rather than static images. There's media services globally. They can insert advertisements globally, do the business intelligence on top of the ads. It's pretty significant work they've been doing. And I think I am done. Are there any questions? I'm also going to, if we can leave this deck somewhere, that's a one-screen summary of everything that's in Azure, which you can just peruse if you have any questions later. If there are no questions, I'll thank you and move on.